Hey everyone, in this video I'll review The Promise by Damon Galgut, who won the 2021 Booker Prize this week. I'll discuss the story, its themes, and some of my own philosophical observations. Damon Galgut is a South African novelist and playwright who was shortlisted twice before, so the third time he got lucky and won the Booker Prize this week. What is The Promise about? It's about an ordinary white South African family. Ironically, the family name Swarts means black in Afrikaans, but they're whites, perhaps alluding to their questionable morality or just coincidence. They are wealthy landowners. The novel has 4 chapters and is about 4 funerals or death in the same family: mother, father, brother, and sister. That covers 4 decades between 1986 and 2018, and only one member who remains alive by the end of the novel. It's centered on death, but deals with the lives of those still alive, and kind of mirrors South African history during and after apartheid. It has been likened to William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, that too is about a funeral. Damon Galgut claims his main theme is time. That's why he centered the novel on 4 funerals in 4 different decades. The German philosopher Martin Heidegger said that it's only through death that we become aware of time and being, therefore live an authentic life. So you could say that it's an existential novel. So these funerals are used as a device to make the family members reflect on their own lives and priorities. Also to show the cyclical nature of life, how life is for the most part repeated by each generations of the same family as well as political leaders. They come, they promise, and the next one comes and makes the same promise, and so forth. The title refers to a promise by a white man made to his wife that after her death, her black maid will get the house in which she lives in. This is a hint that the land which white people owned was supposed to be returned to the black South Africans after apartheid. Her daughter, Amor, wants to fulfill her mother's wish. However, as years go by, first her father and later her brother and sister refuse to fulfill their mother's wish. The black woman continues to live in the house that doesn't legally own. The issue of house ownership closely relates to the issue of land ownership in South Africa. In a way, it mirrors the promise made when apartheid collapsed that black South Africans will benefit from land reforms in post-apartheid South Africa. But 25 years later, the country is still divided in terms of wealth. The poor has remained poor and the rich has gotten richer. So despite the promise and the optimism of the 90s, especially in 1995 Rugby World Cup in which South Africa defeated All Blacks, little has changed. The recent riots in the country just show that. How is the reading experience? I've read many novels that are confusing or difficult, but I still love them. I would say The Promise is quite easy and accessible in comparison, but I still found it a bit choppy for some reason. The point of view shifts between first and third person with no warnings, in a very fluid manner. Some people have suggested it to be cinematic as camera pans and shifts from character to character. For me, it's not smooth camera movement. It felt as though someone filming without a stabilizer in the camera, so quite shaky. What I'm trying to say is the narrative is not smooth enough to connect with one character on a deeper emotional level. How about black characters? Black characters have no voice in the novel. The entire story is told from the white family's perspective. Recently, I watched a documentary by DW on YouTube about Chile, in which the Chilean government invited white Swiss people to Chile in the early 20th century and the promise of giving them a lot of land. Now, a century or so later, the natives and the whites are in one terrible conflict over land ownership and how they live 2 separate lives in the same country and same region. This is quite similar in South Africa. At the end of the novel, however, one black man gets to have the final say, which is quite powerful. He offers his opinion about the whole promise and the house, which I'll not spoil for you. One thing I found interesting in the novel is the issue of disgust. I recently watched a video in which Jordan Peterson and another psychologist discussing disgust and how it affects one's worldview. For example, Peterson, a somewhat conservative himself, claims that the issue of disgust is much stronger among those with conservative-leaning political views. In this novel, the white girl is disgusted by the smell of a black man early in the novel. The smell is not only stifling for her, but also a source of guilt once she tells the black man to leave. This same issue was depicted in the Korean film Parasite, in which the poor family smells. Smell is closely tied to poverty, disease, and germs. The most pressing disease in the novel is HIV/AIDS, which grips South Africa, and ironically, that same girl, disgusted by the smell of a black boy at the beginning, ends up working with HIV patients later in life. Fear and disgust are somewhat intertwined here. Here's a quote. Astrid is a fearful person. Among other things, she is afraid of the dark, poverty, thunderstorms, getting fat, earthquakes, tidal waves, crocodiles, the blacks, the future, the orderly structure of society coming undone. The conservationist by Nadine Gordimer tackles similar issues in South Africa. Land ownership creates a very strong emotional ties between the land and the owner. This is by no means scientific, but if you look around the world, landowners all over the world tend to be more conservative than other kinds of business owners. Why? It's hard to take your land and move somewhere else if you are attacked. So you do everything to keep others away as far as possible. Chris at Leaf by Leaf has one of the most beautiful personal libraries in the world, so one of these days I might raid it. I wonder what kind of lock mechanism he uses to keep his books safe. Anyway, I think the novel tries to make you think about life's priorities through the lens of death. In the face of death, nothing matters. I guess the purpose of the novel was to make you think how things have or have not changed in South Africa. How the country is so divided as ever, the poor remaining poor and the rich has gotten richer. This is not only a South African story, it's everywhere the same. As capitalism has become smarter, so have the rich people. Or you could say, once you own something, it's almost impossible to give it away. In a way, one can say death is easier if you own nothing. It becomes much harder for the wealthy. The more you own, the more worried you become someone might take it away from you. This issue is very prominent in the novel. At the end, all comes down to this old cliche. Money or land doesn't buy you happiness. Kindness does. By making death the main theme, the novel is a bit bleak, but also asking what is the point of being mean, nasty, greedy, and cruel? What is the point of conflict when you are going to die anyway? But here's my 2 cents. I think being human is living an inherently flawed life. You can't have it the other ways. If you are all nice and kind to each other, would we survive? In my video on George Orwell, I discussed his idea that without conflict, humanity loses its purpose. Life is one big competition as to who owns more land, more money, more fame, more power, and more followers and subscribers. Without that drive, it is hard to motivate ourselves. Also, once in a while, some idealists, for example Amor in this novel, come along who defines the world in simple terms. But for the most part, life is a mess. And that gives some of us a purpose to correct the incorrect world. Some mess things up and others try to fix things. The battle will continue until Homo sapiens are alive. So to sum up, it is a story of a house and how tough it is to give the person who is supposed to own it in the first place. Ironic at heart, it is like I take something that belongs to you and then cling on to it for as long as I want to, and then somehow I feel bad and return it to you as if I'm giving you something for free. I guess it's not about the house, it's about the psyche of the white South Africans or any other landowners. How they internally and psychologically battle with the issue of land ownership while watching other fellow black countrymen owning very little or nothing. I guess when you see the poor, you try harder to cling on to what you have. But then there's guilt. Okay, you got me. It's about guilt. Most of the characters turn religious at the end. Okay, it's definitely about guilt. Also love. The kindest white character in the novel, Amor, who by the end of the novel is still alive, her name means love. Is it in reference to Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, that suffering makes you a good person? Amor's morality is tied to her being struck by lightning as a child. Does her love come out of that terrible incident or out of guilt of her family's past? Perhaps a mix of both. She tried to correct the incorrect, fulfill her mother's wish, return the house to the black woman, but it might be too late.